Hello, my name is Jeff Gemiolo, and I'd like to talk about some anti-government corruption. As crazy as it sounds, I have no political ambitions. I actually just want a government that works. Based on what they are finding in the bureaucracies, it's not a surprise to me what they're finding right now in America, because I'm in America. I've been American my entire life. There's been a lot of corruption, 50 years plus. It's actually been corrupted pretty terribly since the 40s. That's when they decided to do the income tax thing, because that is illegal, by the way. And hence the reason why Trump can easily actually get rid of it, because it wasn't ratified as a law. It wasn't ratified by any of the states, or enough states, I should say, to become a law. Regardless, I would like to propose a couple corrective measures. Because, to be honest with you, I think there's, as much as there's some feedback loops actually in the government to protect the people, there's really no protection quality-wise. Because no one... Back in we have to remember, back in the 1776, when the Constitution and all that was written up, when the actual form of government was created, because that was done years later, we were a Christian nation, for the most part, or we were Judeo-Christian. I believe we were Christian. So we actually believed in God and everything else. Well, not so much anymore. It's a bad thing, it is, but we have to kind of bring, some measures back. And you have to remember, back then, they directly lived with tyranny every day because of the British. We kind of were lulled to sleep like we don't, know anything. Taxation without representation, things like that. Remember, they revolted over 3% tax. So when you're paying your 20% tax, you shouldn't be upset. But it's actually not about, inciting violence or anything like that. I'm just offering some very interesting mechanisms that may help some correction in the process. Over the years, we have written a lot of laws. You look at the Affordable Care Act, you look at Patriot Act, they did the exact opposite. So I believe anytime a law should be enacted within 5 years, we should be able to, as a citizenry, we should be able to vote on that legislation nationally. And if we find out that if it's voted that it's not good, literally we should take the people who signed it and put them in jail for maybe a year or so. Because to be honest with you, they really have no skin in the game anymore. From a political perspective, the Senate is pretty much untouchable. House reps get turned around a lot because they're the ones that actually get renewed a lot. Senate, they pretty much live in that dump. And the problem is there's no repercussions for them. The only way they can go to jail is if their fellow senators say they can go to jail. Oh, but did they not take an oath to the United States Constitution, the same one that the Uniform Code of Military Justice does? Oops. So perhaps they should go to jail for, we need a charge, violation of public trust. None of those laws were good. Patriot Act, you got more spy planes and more spies on you right now. Hey, they took that to go over and digitally watch you all day. They monitor everything you do. Remember, it's not just terrorists. Remember, you're a terrorist now. You forgot that. Patriot Act said you are a terrorist now because you're not the government. Then you got Affordable Care Act. And actually, what's really funny about the Affordable Care Act is if you do a little research on history, I'm not a young person. I've had medical care my entire life. I recently, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, dropped it completely. When it became optional, I dropped Obamacare immediately. I want nothing to do with the medical system. And let me explain what I've had over the years. Back in the day when I first got into computers, and this is like 20-some years old, most jobs actually did not offer medical coverage, and if they did, it usually was something really expensive and it was stupid. So I would kind of like not take it because it was an elective at that point. Then at one point I got a job working where I had an HMO. where literally, but it was one of the HMOs. I'm trying to remember which one. I think it was Blue Cross and Blue Shield. As much as it was expensive, but I also had a family. What was good about it is literally you went to one building. It was, you had a campus, so to speak. So you went to a building that was your HMO's area, I guess, service center. I guess HMO, service area. So you went there, so you didn't need a primary doctor. Because I didn't want a primary doctor, why would I bother? I don't go to a doctor anyway. So whenever I had to go, it was always like either the emergency room or I needed my stitches taken out. Then I needed to go there and they would take them out for me. But regardless, you would go there, you kind of pay one price, you had a deductible, life was good. There was a couple jobs and they started to require it. The first I've heard of required is I went for a job in South Carolina and they were going to pay me $60,000 a year or $70,000 a year. No, $60,000 a year is what they were going to pay me. But they said I was required to have their medical insurance because it's South Carolina law. That's the first I heard anything close to Affordable Care Act kind of things like you had to have stuff. I'm like, whoa, 1 minute. I went and did the math and found out that, okay, if I actually took that job, making $60,000 a year, I would actually be making $42,000 a year because I had to pay for my medical for a family. Oops, not cutting it. So notice I didn't take the job. That's an awfully big dig for medical care. I'll be honest with you, I didn't need that much medical care. It was me and I was married, my wife. And the good news is my children were already out of the house. So that's the good news. Eventually, after trying to, I had to get a primary health care physician. I forgot which job I was in. And we looked through books upon books upon books, and there was no doctors available. Okay, so I'm paying for coverage. I have no primary care physician because I'm required to have one, but there is no one accepting patients. Okay, smells kind of weird. Oddly enough, if I went to emergency room, they probably would have covered me anyway. So it wouldn't really matter. I would have to pay a little bit more, I think is what it was. But regardless, that's just the trend. The trend was every time I had to get medical, I would paw through these books, and they would or they do it online too. That's always good. You need to contact these people who are available doctors in the network. How about you tell me when it's available? Because to be honest with you, I went through 300 of them. I called them, and none of them are available taking patients. So essentially, what I heard is it's a scam. Even though they do cover emergency work, whatever. So it wasn't really big for me to actually care about medical at all. Finally, when it came to Obamacare, when I came to Louisville, actually, I didn't even bother looking, okay? Because I went and looked initially, and there was no, everyone was already complaining about not having a primary physician, and the people that had them were like really, really old. So it's kind of like, if you had your physician from 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, you pretty much had one. If not, you didn't have one. They're kind of not taking patients like you. They're only taking Social Security patients. That's always a favorite. So, okay. So essentially, they got a system where you're required, put a gun to your head and make sure you have this. But there's really no checks and balances. Actually, in Affordable Care Act, the only one that made money in the deal is the IRS for fining companies for not filing properly. They're the ones that made the money. And their insurance companies, they got the highest profits during the Affordable Care Act because you were required to have insurance with them, even though you couldn't afford to use it. Even if you didn't even have a job, you had to have it. So you basically got raped and didn't know it. Now, as a recourse to this, what I would say is maybe, from a medical perspective, here's something very entertaining that most people don't know. Before we started to get into this medical, even Medicare garbage, okay, your county was always been responsible for you if you didn't have medical insurance. That was part of your county taxes. Uninsured people were covered by your county taxes. So if you didn't have insurance, it didn't really matter. You paid for it. I don't like it because you're paid as a group, but everyone likes to say they're taking away your medical. No, actually they're not. because the county level medical was enough to keep you alive. You didn't get the Cadillac plan. You had 3 people to a room or 2 people to a room. You had, just enough to keep you alive when you were released. That's kind of how it worked. There was no frills. And that was actually a lot of extra plans that you could buy for most HMOs to have extra stuff. But anyway, so what I would suggest is when a law goes so awry like that, to effect where it doesn't actually help anybody, it actually helped the wrong people. A, you should get your money back, first of all. And B, the people who actually underwrote that should probably every five years actually have it up for review and let the people vote on it. Because you know something, you're only a representative. So you represented us and you represented us poorly. So back to, if we don't like it, we should repeal the bill and put your politician in jail who signed it. Because you should stop reading bad laws. Because you have to remember, these people do not read the laws. They don't. You think anyone read Affordable Care Act? No. Everyone threw a piece of it in there. But if I remember correctly, the Affordable Care Act is the old Hillary Care Act. And they've been circulating it around for pretty much 10 years, if not longer. And if I remember correctly, the insurance companies wrote it. So the problem is no one has a legal recourse. The insurance companies made record profits. You got the worst medical care you would ever have in your life. As I said, I'm very shocked to find who actually got good medical care, because no one really does. Anyway, that was just my thought on that. I do believe that every senator and every actually House rep should, at the end of their terms, basically have a revote in your district that you represent, whether it be, if you're a rep, it's your representative district, or if you're a senator, it would be your state. And the military would actually take a ballot, and you would vote on whether or not you approve of their performance. A, yes, I approve. They should get their benefits. B, I don't approve, they shouldn't get their benefits. Or C, they should go to jail. They didn't do anything they said. It's false representation. Because to be honest with you, when a person goes into, especially a senator, they have a nasty habit once they go to Washington. They have a tendency they want to play nice with others. And that's actually not your job. Your job is to represent your people, to do what they want to do. The problem is back in the day, back when the United States was founded, generally you only spent maybe a month in Washington. You actually spent 11 months back in your home district every day, usually working. Because, just because you're a politician doesn't mean you don't have to put meat on the table. Because it wasn't a real paying job. It was actually a terrible job. But somehow it became a good job. And that's the problem. So, that's the only litmus test you can possibly do with them. If you do bad work, you start looking, you look at it this way. You spent 8 years in Washington, 2 terms for a senator. Do you know how much pork you've actually gotten right from Washington itself? Everything from loans, from banks, from all kinds of criminality. Just there. And I don't think anyone's immune either. That's what's really troubling about it. There was, if you actually pay attention to the Federalist documents, it said 2 important things. Well, actually it said many important things. One of them was you should not have a standing army, because a standing army causes trouble. It does. I'll tell you right now. Because the theory behind it at the time is a militia was much better because they did work. They actually did their own, farming or whatever they were doing as a primary job. It was more of a defensive role versus an army is an offensive thing. Other thing was you should never centralize power anywhere. So they were actually against putting anything in Washington at all. The government should not be centralized at all. Example is you got your 3 branches, they should be in 3 different places. Disaster-wise, it just makes more sense. Lately, continuation of government did that too. It moved everything all around. I also look at it and say, you look at a lot of the things that are happening right now in the bureaucracy itself. You're going to find a lot of interesting things happening. A lot of things are going to go under scrutiny. A lot of government institutions think that they're above the law. And above the law means above oversight. And they're not. Someone signed to create them as an organization. CIA was created by somebody. FBI was created by somebody. FDIC was created by somebody. FDA was created by somebody. CDC was created by somebody. Are you paying attention? Whoever created them is actually responsible for them usually. And they could take them away. And that's kind of the problem, is we've gotten so used to having such a huge bureaucracy. And what is this bureaucracy doing? It's kind of like the funny thing. You go to build a house. You need a home inspection to ensure that it was inspected. However, if it does burn down and the house was inspected, does that mean you can sue your inspector? You should be able to. Why not? It's illegal. You don't really need an inspection. Same thing with most governmental organizations, by the way. They kind of shove bureaucracy down your throat when you shouldn't have had it. Motor vehicles is another example. But, as I said, I have a very entertaining look at the government. I think it should have the most smallest government humanly possible. I'll be honest with you. Once the feds get done with their stuff, the people are going to get a wild hair in their butt, and they're going to do the same thing to your state and to your locals. And they need to. Because when I left Buffalo, I was losing 65% of my income to taxes and fees just to live in a place in poverty in Buffalo. And I wasn't making a lot of money, by the way. I was making $42,000 a year. I was actually making slightly above the poverty level. And I was losing 60% to federal and state. So that was considered a good job in Buffalo. One car. I lived in a house that was cheaper than rent. It was $336 a month. It was a $32,000 house. My taxes, by the way, property taxes were $2,000 a year on that house. Because they itemized it out. Fire, school, and utility. Utilities, you're probably doing for some reason have to pay for sewers and everything else, and schools and police and everything. They're all separate out there. Not to be confused with the fact that you're paying your gasoline taxes is one of the highest in the country. No, actually California's the highest. Anyway, as much as that sounds like that's a crazy set of numbers, I moved to Texas where they have no income tax and I had a house that was $350,000, and I was paying less than that in taxes. I was paying $1,800 in taxes a year. And the rumor was they're going to increase the taxes by 0.25%, and the people in Texas almost burned down the city hall. In the city of Buffalo, or actually almost all in New York, okay, regularly they have 2 and 3% a year updates in their taxes, in their property tax. By the way, I looked at my house now. Somehow, magically, that same square footage is now worth $140,000. Somehow, in bureaucrat eyes. And there's a reason why it's not been sold. So, entertaining. There's a reason why it's used as an Airbnb right now. As I said, then you start looking at other parts of the government. Like, example is the judicial branch. You look at the Supreme Court judges. I think every month they should have to go over and either have a meeting with the president, or have literally a public show of what they did that month. And to be honest with you, the reason for that is actually to see if they're still alive. To see if they're still in the same country, by the way. You can thank Ginsburg for that one, because a lot of I think she was dead a long time. A lot of people voted on her behalf. And oddly enough, I have actually nothing against Ginsburg, other than the fact that people like to put her up on that pedestal about abortion. I go, but actually, she even said that was a crappy piece of legislation. She never should have done that. I can respect that, but she didn't repeal it either. So it was no surprise Roe versus Wade went down the toilet. But I also do believe that any judge that is caught not complying with the UCMJ should be immediately expelled. And go to jail, by the way. Not just expelled, go to jail. Because there's laws. We're a country of laws, last time I looked. Politicians of long ago have actually forgot a lot of that. And so did actually most government employees, actually, most bureaucrats. They trust their bureaucracy when the reality is theft is theft. A good chunk of the government decided they want to work from home. Okay, then you're fired. No offense. It says in your contract you go to work and here's my place I work. That means you don't want to work there. I don't know. As I said, I just know there has to be some changes. I know locally there has to be some changes. I do believe that you should be able to vote within someone's term of office. You should be able to vote them out. If you get a majority vote of the people they represent, they should be able to vote you out. I actually think they should be able to vote you into jail for violation of public trust. So, worst thing that could happen is a politician says, I don't know what I can do, but I'll go there and we'll see. That's the best they can tell you. Because if they say anything else to you, they're full of it, what they can do. And then at that point, if they don't deliver anything, hey, you didn't do anything for us. You didn't represent us. And the fact that you really didn't represent us, you represented yourself. As creepy as it sounds, actually, you see a lot less of that with the reps than you do see with the Senate. The Senate, for those that didn't take civics, the House representative actually represents the people. So it's a majority vote there. The Senate represents two representatives for every state. So it is technically supposed to represent the country as a whole. So what's good for the people and what's good for the country. Problem is the Senate votes for whatever the Senate wants. And usually that's whatever makes them personally more money. I can't even talk about insider trading. I think politicians actually shouldn't be paid, nor should I'll be bold, and I'm going to say every politician that takes government money should actually have to publish transparently in a newspaper their tax returns every year and their families. Why are we not making it transparent? We got an awful lot of crime families right now. California alone has the Pelosi crime family and a Brown crime family. If you think they're not a crime family, we need to relook into that. They're what they call them political dynasties, which means political crime family. New York has had them for years. Como, no good comes out of them. As I said, it's just they have name recognition, as they like to call it. I don't know. I've heard crazy things. What I've heard, and I do believe it to be accurate now at this point. Now it's so twisted. I think it's actually right. Is that politicians actually do spell work on their campaigns to actually have people vote them in. That's the only way any of this makes sense anymore. No offense. Not like any of the Como family was really good in Buffalo. It's not like was really good anywhere in the state. So anyway, I just understand. I know we need to reform. I'd like to reform the whole system though, because I'll be honest with you. The way we have it is not, the three branches, the way they work right now, is not really working because actually no one has any skin in the game to actually do the right thing. Oddly enough, the president actually can be impeached, if I remember correctly, by the Senate. And I think there's actually a procedure for that. And they've actually tried before. But they've really never really enforced any of that stuff. So. I don't like theft. And when politicians do it, or let's just say bureaucrats do it, Anyone in a public trust. I have less to do with people, than bureaucrats. Bureaucrats kind of make their own laws. They'd say, we have this organization, we're doing this, we have these guidelines. I go, none of it means squat. So I propose this. If an agency, actually the same thing with a corporation too. If they wronged you, sue them. Sue their board of directors. For the life of me, I can't remember the name of the beer commercial that actually did a lot of trans work. I can't remember what it was. And it almost like toilet bowled the company. I would sue the board of directors because someone signed off on that media that went out there. And to be honest with you, what makes you think they weren't voted for the other side? What makes you think they weren't selling short on the stock? I call that a crime. Because you know something? You don't know what insider trading they did. Call me cynical, but I'll be honest with you. I think it's illegal to sell short to start with. You should always invest in something growing. If it doesn't grow, well, you sell it. But you shouldn't sell short, because selling short means I'm betting it's going to get worse, and now I can go out and cause trouble somewhere else and make that get worse, or spread rumors that it gets worse. That is how a lot of money managers do their thing, by the way. That's how the fat cats get fatter. They spread around little rumors about things, and all of a sudden, the stock starts to tank. And they sold short anyway. They don't care. They did that with GameStop, actually. And the only thing that was smart about that is there's a group of people that said, no, they have good numbers. And they challenged their bluff and pumped the numbers up higher than they were because they were restructured, did a good job, and almost drove those other companies out of business. And I'll be honest with you, I think they should have. So the fat cats have been doing that for years of rigging the market like that. Even though we're not talking about rigging the market now, but as I said, I'm against a lot of things. I'm definitely against politicians knowing a damn thing. I'm actually against politicians making laws at this point. Because I don't think they actually make laws. I think for every law that they make, they should repeal 10. Maybe we can finally get the fact that I can't. It's illegal in Washington to actually have a horse and buggy right down the street. Maybe we could finally get rid of that law, maybe, since you can't have a horse and buggy there anyway, since they're all cars. I don't know. I think we should actually just get rid of an occupation called politician or bureaucrat, actually. We should bring it back to a volunteer position. I think it should be, to be honest with you, you should actually get a place to stay while you're there. You should get minimum wage. That's what I think. You don't need professionals because you shouldn't have many of them. That's the funny part about it is none of these people are professionals. So, anyway, thank you for listening if you got this far. That is my opinion, what I think should happen. Have a great day.